My name is Nathan Stone. I'm a 42-year-old staff sergeant in the 82nd Airborne Division, and I've served 4 tours across Iraq and Afghanistan. The Army isn't just my job. It's where I found purpose, camaraderie, and a second family when I left my own behind. For 13 years, I balanced the rigors of deployment with the routines of married life. Becky and I met at a friend's BBQ back in 2010. She was finishing nursing school. I was home between tours. We fell in love over late-night study sessions and shared dreams of traveling the world together. In 2014, we bought our first house in Spokane. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, nothing fancy, but it was ours. I signed the VA loan in my name, but Becky's name went on the deed, because that's what partners do. It felt like the foundation of everything we were building. Between deployments, I would come home to her warm smile and that same old routine. Morning coffee on the porch, weekend hikes, fixing broken appliances together. I never imagined any of it could unravel so quickly. But as our tours piled up, the distance grew. I noticed it before I even left for Kandahar, a coldness in her eyes when I kissed her goodbye, a hesitation in her voice when I asked about her day. I chalked it up to stress until the day I saw the messages I wasn't supposed to see. I first met Becky at a backyard barbecue in 2010. Standing under string lights with a paper plate of burgers in her hand. She was finishing nursing school, determined and compassionate, everything I admired. I was fresh home between deployments, feeling both restless and hopeful. Our early days felt effortless, late-night study sessions, early morning coffee runs, and dreams scribbled on napkins about a future we'd build together. We celebrated my Army promotions and her graduation with equal pride, believing nothing could come between us. In 2014, we sealed that belief by buying our first home in Spokane. It wasn't much, a 3-bedroom fixer-upper with a tiny yard, but to us, it was a castle. I handled the VA loan paperwork. She picked out paint colors and garden plants. Every renovation, every shared laugh in that living room felt like proof we were invincible. But over the years, subtle shifts began to cast long shadows. Calls went unanswered for hours. Texts stopped at one-word replies. She started working late at the dental office she'd taken on for extra income, then joined a gym, but never came home exhausted, only distant. I brushed it off, blaming deployments, paperwork stress, the endless churn of military life. Looking back now, those small cracks were the heralds of a storm. They whispered that trust could fracture, that love could fray, and that even the strongest bonds can unravel in silence. I didn't catch the warning signs at first. Becky had always been open and curious, but suddenly she started drifting away. I'd end long phone calls with, "Love you, talk soon," only to hear nothing back for hours. Her phone lay face down on the kitchen table, like a silent sentinel guarding secrets. Then small details began to stack up. A new gym bag left in the hallway with tags still on. A half-read book by her bedside I'd never bought. She mentioned her friend's divorce as if it were a thrilling adventure, not a tragedy. She stopped asking about my day, preferring to tell me about late-night coffee runs and spontaneous road trips with coworkers I'd never met. Those quiet gaps and one-sided conversations were the gentle alarms I chose to ignore, until the moment I realized they were the first signs of a betrayal in motion. I didn't raise my voice. I simply stared at my reflection in that dull metal wall and felt something shift inside, a quiet determination replacing the shock. When Becky's email arrived, I took a deep breath, closed my laptop, and carried on with my duties without a word. Later that night, instead of calling her or arguing, I moved fast and silently. I rented a small, secure storage unit miles from our home and packed away our birth certificates, marriage license, and any heirlooms that meant something more than they realized. I opened a second bank account under a new alias, funneling a discrete portion of my pay each month, just enough to safeguard my future, but not enough to tip her off. I backed up every family photo, every shared document, and I logged into our home security feed to make sure nothing was missing. Each click felt purposeful, a step toward protecting myself rather than reacting out of hurt. By morning, I had a folder labeled Emergency Assets on my laptop, and a mental checklist of legal contacts, from my lawyer James to my finance officer back at the base. There was no dramatic reveal, no angry voicemail, just cold, calculated preparation, ready for whatever came next. And in that silence, I realized this was no longer about heartbreak. It had become a mission. I remember the weight of my duffel bag more than anything else that morning. The desert sun had barely warmed the runway when I saw her standing by the gates. Becky, clutching a single carry-on and forcing a smile. She wrapped me in a hug so tight I could almost hear the years of laughter and trust sigh between us. "Stay safe," she whispered, her eyes clear and controlled, as if she were sending a coworker off on a routine shift rather than her husband into combat. I held her for just a moment longer than I needed to, then stepped back and saluted before boarding the plane. The engines roared to life, and through the porthole, I watched her silhouette disappear in the brightness of the morning. In that instant, something inside me hardened. The mantra of the airborne, "No man left behind," echoed in my mind, but it was no longer about the unit. It was about me, about the vows I'd made, the life I'd built, and the betrayal I could already taste like dust on my tongue. As the ramp lifted and the desert horizon swallowed the world below, I made a silent promise. I would honor that hug by keeping my word to protect my future. No plea, no argument, no angry call. I would carry the memory of her goodbye like a mission brief, unwavering and precise. And I knew then that the true battle had only just begun. My phone buzzed in the mess hall, an alert from our bank app. I glanced down and froze. Another withdrawal of $88,500. My chest tightened as I watched our carefully built savings of $47,000 evaporate before my eyes. I set my tray aside, closed the app, and took a slow breath. There was no panic in my voice when I called the bank's fraud department. It was all measured calm, the tone of someone accustomed to handling crises. The representative confirmed what I already suspected. Becky had been draining funds in steady increments for weeks, beginning the day I deployed. Walking back to my bunk, I let each step solidify my resolve. This wasn't a moment for anger or regret. It was a tactical setback demanding a strategic response. I pictured the off-site locker where I'd stowed our most precious documents and the hidden account I'd funded in silence. Those precautions were no longer optional. They were lifelines. That night, under the dim glow of my bedside lamp, I opened my journal and mapped out the next moves. Legal counsel, bank audits, forensic accountants. Every bullet point felt like arming myself for battle. The betrayal had cut deep, but it also lit a fire under my commitment to reclaim what was mine. By the time the desert wind howled outside my window, I'd drafted discreet emails to my lawyer and the base commander, requesting emergency leave and support. In that moment, I understood that the true cost of this ambush would be measured not in dollars lost, but in the lengths I would go to see justice done. I couldn't trust my gut alone. I needed proof. Later that evening, I logged into our home security system from a terminal on base. Every camera feed flickered to life. The front porch, the living room, the kitchen where I'd spent so many mornings. I watched as Becky's new partner, Jeremy, strolled through the frame, sipping coffee from my favorite mug. He paused by the counter I had renovated, ran a hand over the granite, and laughed with Becky like they owned the place. I switched to exterior cameras and saw a dark pickup truck idling in our driveway. An unmarked vehicle I'd never seen before. The license plate didn't match any I'd registered. My voice in the empty control room was barely a whisper. "Got you!" Screenshot after screenshot, I cataloged timestamps and angles. I noted every detail. The Seahawks sweatshirt he wore. The way they moved through our home as if it belonged to them. Each image was a silent witness to their trespass. Next, I backed up the video clips to an encrypted drive, labeling folders Home Security, Unauthorized Access, and Kitchen Personal Effects. I cross-referenced these with bank statements and text messages, building a digital dossier that would later prove invaluable. Finally, I sent an encrypted message to James. Evidence secured. Preparing next steps. In that message was more than information. It was a declaration. I was in control of this mission. No flashy confrontations, no angry voicemails, just hard evidence gathering, one frame at a time. And when the time came to strike back, I knew these silent witnesses would speak louder than any words. I knew evidence alone wouldn't stop her or Jeremy, so I activated my legal contingency plan. First thing the next morning, I sent a secure email to James. I need a subpoena for all account records and home refinance applications. Discreetly. His reply came almost instantly. On it, Meet me at our usual diner in 2 hours. Bring everything. At the diner, I slid the encrypted thumb drive across the table. James nodded as he inserted it into his laptop. Over the hum of morning traffic, he walked me through the documents he'd already pulled. Loan applications bearing my forged signature, bank transfers to an unfamiliar realtor, and records linking Jeremy to prior fraudulent schemes. Next, we drafted a formal complaint to the local police department. James explained the language we'd use, emphasizing conspiracy, identity theft, and mortgage fraud, to ensure the case would escalate rather than be dismissed as a simple divorce dispute. I signed the affidavit in blue ink, my hand steady, my purpose clear. With that filed, it was time for a second move, alerting military investigators. I contacted the Base Inspector General's office with the subject line, Official Request, Financial Fraud Investigation. Within hours, I was on a secure conference call with a CID agent, walking them through the timeline and forwarding the same encrypted files I'd given James. Finally, we prepared a freezing order for the house refinance. James coordinated with a district court clerk to file an emergency motion, no hearings, automatic freeze, to prevent any more money from disappearing. I provided the signed motion at a satellite courthouse, watched the clerk stamp it, filed and sealed, and felt a surge of satisfaction knowing our assets were now legally protected. By sundown, my allies were in place. Attorney James handling civil matters, CID agents investigating military fraud, and local police pursuing the mortgage crimes. My mission had shifted from silent preparation to full legal engagement, and every document, every phone call, every secured file was another step toward reclaiming what was mine. That morning, I arrived on our street before dawn, parking my rental car 2 houses down. The air was still cool, and the only sound was the rustle of sagebrush in the breeze. I tapped my watch twice, my signal to the team. Minutes later, a line of unmarked black SUVs rolled into the driveway, headlights piercing the dim light. I slipped behind a pine tree, phone in hand, recording every moment. Agents in dark suits fanned out silently, moving with military precision. Inside the house, Jeremy laughed as he sipped coffee, oblivious. Then the front door burst open. 2 agents stormed in, badges flashed. FBI, search and arrest warrant. The echo of their voices seemed to shake the windows. I watched through the scope of my phone. Jeremy's eyes widened. He dropped his mug, steam twisting in the cold light. They cuffed him without resistance, guiding him down the hall past framed family photos that now felt like evidence of a life stolen. Behind them, Becky stood at the top of the stairs, face pale. One agent gestured her downstairs. She obeyed silently, her shoulders slumped as if the weight of years had settled on her frame. I felt no triumph in that moment, only resolve. I sent a single text to James. "It's live." Within seconds, he messaged back, "Good work, keep recording." Outside, the convoy idled while agents carried boxes of documents and a sealed safe to the SUVs. I recorded the tag numbers, the stamped evidence bags, every detail that would bolster our case. As the last vehicle departed, I exhaled. The mission to confront their betrayal had shifted into a new phase, preserving proof and ensuring accountability. No shouts, no dramatic monologue, just the silent certainty that I'd orchestrated this operation with the same precision I'd used overseas. And as the sun climbed higher, I knew the real reckoning was only beginning. When the hearing date finally arrived, the courtroom was packed. I stood beside James as the prosecution laid out the evidence: fraudulent refinance applications, forged signatures, and the digital dossier we'd built from security footage and bank records. The judge listened intently, thumbing through the spreadsheets and photo stills that illustrated every calculated step of the scheme. At the conclusion, the judge turned to Jeremy Ryan and read the sentence: 8 years for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Jeremy's shoulders slumped as he whispered something to the public defender. Then came the sentence for Daniel Spencer: 12 years for mortgage fraud and racketeering. Each conviction felt like another measure of justice restored. Next, the civil bench addressed Becky's role. Although she claimed ignorance, the forged documents and her fingerprints on closing paperwork told a different story. Under the settlement, she agreed to full restitution, every dollar taken back, and forfeited any claim on our home or my pension. She also signed a binding confession acknowledging her part in the conspiracy. In exchange, I declined to press additional charges, allowing her a chance to rebuild her own life. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The restitution check was issued the following week, and my hidden bank account returned to its rightful balance. More importantly, the legal freeze remained in place, ensuring no further assets could disappear. That evening, I received a letter from another military spouse who had heard about our case. She thanked me for shining a light on the network of schemes targeting deployed service members. It was one more reminder that sometimes standing up for yourself paves the way for others to do the same. By the time I locked the courthouse door behind me, I knew this chapter was closed. The mission to reclaim what was mine had succeeded, and justice had been served. I arrived in Missoula under a blanket of pine-scented air, and a sky so vast it swallowed my past whole. The small cabin stood on 10 acres of untamed forest, its weathered boards promising a solitude I craved. I carried only a duffel bag, my military duffel traded for a simple pack, and the weight of loss felt lighter with every step down the gravel driveway. Inside, the cabin was raw and honest. No marble countertops or polished floors, just knotty pine walls and sunlight spilling through tall windows. I unpacked my tools first, a hammer, a chisel, and a pile of reclaimed wood I planned to shape into something new. Each tap of the hammer was a reminder that I was building my own life, far from the betrayal and courtroom battles. Scout, my German shepherd, bounded alongside me as I explored the creek at the edge of the property. Watching him splash through the water, ears perked and tongue lolling, I felt a simple joy I hadn't known in months. The rhythm of nature, the sound of wind through the fir trees, the murmur of the stream, became my soundtrack, replacing the sterile walls of military bases and the echo of courtroom gavel strikes. Evenings brought a quiet routine, chopping wood for the stove, brewing coffee over an open flame, and poring over blueprints for a workshop I'd build next. I'd journal by lamplight, sketching my plans and reflecting on how far I'd come. The pain of betrayal still flickered at the edges of my mind, but it no longer controlled me. Here, I was the master of my own story. By sunrise each day, I was already at work, repairing the cabin's porch, carving shelves from fallen logs, and laying the foundation for a simple carpentry business I could run from home. And as I hammered the first nail into fresh timber, I knew I wasn't just rebuilding a house. I was forging a future that belonged entirely to me. I never expected my story to travel beyond that courtroom. A few weeks after the verdict, I found a stack of hand-addressed letters waiting at my cabin. One from a Navy spouse in Virginia whose husband was halfway through his third deployment when the same scheme nearly cost her their home. Another from a young Army wife in Georgia who wrote that our case gave her the courage to report suspicious bank transfers she'd ignored for months. Each envelope held more than words. It carried shared pain, relief, and the hope that exposing this network could save someone else from waking up to an empty bank account. As I read through those letters by lamplight, I realized the mission had taken on a new dimension. It wasn't just about reclaiming what was mine. It was about shining a light on a predatory operation that preyed on trust and distance. I contacted a military spouse support group online, offered to share my experience on their forum, and volunteered to speak at a veterans outreach event. When I spoke, I told them, "Trust your gut, take quiet precautions, and don't hesitate to gather proof. You owe it to yourself to protect your future." By reaching out, I saw the ripple effect of one man's stand against deception. Conversations opened, support networks formed, and other families came forward with their own evidence. In a way, the mission continued, not with subpoenas and warrants, but with empathy, guidance, and collective vigilance. And though the betrayal still stung, it was tempered by the knowledge that standing up for myself helped safeguard countless others. I learned that the smallest warning signs, missed calls, half-truths, unexplained changes, deserve our full attention. Never dismiss gut instincts as overreactions. When you sense something isn't right, pause and observe before giving in to shame or denial. Early awareness can mean the difference between a manageable situation and a full-scale crisis. Protect what matters most by creating discreet safety nets from day one. Store originals of birth certificates, deeds, and heirlooms in a secure off-site location. Set up a secondary bank account under a different name and funnel a modest portion of your income there on a regular schedule. These quiet precautions aren't about mistrust, they're about responsibility for your own future. Document everything: screenshots of account activity, photos from security cameras, saved emails, timestamps. In court, it's the hard evidence that speaks louder than any argument. Use encrypted drives, label files clearly, and share access with a trusted legal ally. When the time comes, you'll have an unassailable record of the truth. Don't go it alone. Engage professionals, lawyers, financial advisors, even military investigators if you're serving abroad. Reach out to community or support groups who understand your unique challenges. There's strength in numbers and knowledge in shared experience. When you combine quiet determination with expert guidance, you reclaim control. Above all, remember this isn't just about reacting. It's about choosing your own narrative. You can rebuild stronger, wiser, and more resilient than before. Trust your preparation, lean on your allies, and keep moving forward. I sit here on the porch of my cabin as dust settles over the pines, scout curled at my feet, and I'm reminded that every ending plants the seed for something new. What began as a betrayal halfway around the world led me back to what truly matters: integrity, purpose, and community. I think about Becky and Jeremy and the choices they made, but mostly I think about every person who feels powerless when life derails them. You have the power to protect your future. You have the right to stand up for yourself, quietly but firmly. If my story taught me anything, it's that the most important missions aren't fought on foreign soil. They're fought in moments of doubt, in late-night preparations, in the decision to gather proof instead of giving in to despair. So, here's what I want you to do next. Look for your own warning signs. Take one practical step today, whether it's backing up an important document or setting up a secondary bank account. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've ever faced a similar betrayal or know someone who has, comment below and join the conversation. Remember, silence only benefits those who seek to take what isn't theirs. But when we unite our voices, our evidence, and our resolve, we become unbreakable. Thank you for watching. If you found value in this story, hit subscribe for more tales of accountability and resilience. Until next time, stay vigilant and stay true to your mission.